January the 17th, 1945, Ardennes Forest, Belgium. The snow falls in silence, thick, white, endless. A German Lanzer crouches behind the shattered remains of a Panzer Siam, its iron hull split open like a broken ribcage. His breath mists in the frozen air. His hands, wrapped in strips of burlap, tremble not from cold alone. Across the clearing, through the skeletal trees, he hears it, a sound that does not belong to war as he knows it. Laughter, American laughter, and then, impossibly, the rumble of engines. Not the desperate cough of fuel-starved German machines, but the confident purr of abundance. The soldier closes his eyes. He has been told many things about the Americans, that they are soft, that they lack discipline, that they will crumble when faced with the hardened warriors of the Reich. But here, in this frozen hell, with his own army starving and retreating, he begins to understand a different truth. The Americans are not what he was promised. For years, the German soldier had been shaped by a narrative. From the moment he donned the field grey uniform, he was fed a vision of his enemy across the Atlantic. American soldiers, the propaganda declared, were mongrels, undisciplined, cowardly, corrupted by jazz music and Hollywood decadence. They were the products of a weak democracy, a nation without unity, without the iron will of the fatherland. Joseph Goebbels himself had sneered at them in broadcasts, a rabble of farmers and factory workers playing at war, led by incompetent generals, propped up only by industrial machinery they did not deserve. The German soldier believed this, or tried to. He had been taught that superior ideology, superior race, superior discipline would overcome any material advantage. He had conquered Poland in weeks, brought France to its knees in 40 days, pushed deep into the Soviet Union with the confidence of destiny. America, distant and decadent, seemed an afterthought, a nation that would send equipment but not heart, money but not courage. But then came North Africa. November 1942, Operation Torch, the first real collision. German forces, veterans of Rommel's Afrika Korps, watched the Americans land on the shores of Morocco and Algeria with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. The early engagements seemed to confirm the propaganda. At Kasserine Pass in February 1943, German armor tore through inexperienced American units, sending them reeling backward in confusion. Rommel himself noted the Americans fought clumsily, scattered, uncertain. The German soldiers laughed. Here was proof. The Americans were amateurs. But Rommel, ever the realist, added a chilling observation in his diary. They learn quickly. And they did. Within months, those same Americans returned, reorganized, retrained, relentless. At El Getar, at Gafsa, they pushed back. They adapted. They did not break. What startled the German soldier was not their tactics, but their supply. He had grown accustomed to rationing, to counting, bullets, to scavenging boots from the dead, but the Americans moved with a logistical avalanche that defied comprehension. Trucks, endless convoys of trucks, rolling forward with ammunition, fuel, food, medical supplies, fresh uniforms. A German Obergefreiter captured near Tunis told his interrogators he had seen American soldiers discard perfectly good boots simply because they were muddy. Discard them. The concept seemed obscene. In the German army, a soldier wore his boots until they disintegrated, then wrapped his feet in rags. The American army replaced them as casually as changing socks. It was not merely abundance. It was a kind of material arrogance that gnawed at the German psyche. They had been told they were the master race, destined to rule. Yet here was an enemy who treated war like a business operation, efficient and inexhaustible. Italy brought deeper revelations. As German forces retreated up the peninsula through 1943 and 1944, they fought Americans in the mountains, in the mud, in the brutal grinding advance toward Rome. The German soldier respected the terrain, respected the difficulty of the fight, but he began to notice something else, something that disturbed the narrative he had carried. The Americans did not fight with the fanaticism of the SS or the desperate ferocity of the Soviets. They fought with a kind of pragmatic determination. They used overwhelming firepower to minimize their own casualties. They called in artillery barrages that shook the earth, air strikes that turned German positions into moonscapes. A lieutenant from the 29th Panzergrenadier Division, captured at Anzio, remarked bitterly to a war correspondent, "They do not fight like soldiers, they fight like engineers, they calculate, they destroy, they move on." There was no glory in it, no Wagnerian heroism, just methodical, industrial annihilation. And yet beneath that machinery, the German soldier began to see the men themselves. American prisoners, when taken, were young, often younger than their German captors. Farm boys from Iowa, factory workers from Detroit, clerks from New York. They did not look like conquerors, they looked like anyone. But they carried with them something intangible, something the German soldier struggled to name. Confidence, perhaps, or entitlement. They believed they would win, not because of ideology, but because winning was inevitable. One captured GI asked why he fought, shrugged and said, "So I can go home." Home. Not for the fatherland, not for glory, not for conquest, just home. The simplicity of it was maddening. How could such men, lacking the fire of true belief, be winning this war? The answer came in the small things. A German soldier, overrunning an abandoned American position near Cassino, found a cache of supplies. He opened a crate expecting ammunition. Instead, cigarettes, cartons of them, Hershey bars, canned fruit, coffee, real coffee, not the acorn substitute the Wehrmacht had been drinking for years. He sat among the boxes and wept, not from joy, but from the crushing realization of what he was facing. This was not an army scraping by. This was an army so wealthy it could afford to leave luxuries behind in retreat. Another soldier, captured in France after D-Day, described watching American medics treat wounded Germans with the same care as their own. They used morphine freely, antibiotics, plasma transfusions. The German army was running out of bandages. The contrast was not merely material, it was philosophical. The Americans, for all their supposed lack of discipline, valued the individual soldier in a way the Wehrmacht never had. They spent resources to save lives. The German command spent lives to save resources. Normandy shattered illusions. June 6, 1944. The German soldiers dug into the Atlantic Wall, had been promised that any invasion would be thrown back into the sea. They had fortifications, minefields, artillery. They had experience, and for a few hours as landing craft burned and bodies piled on Omaha Beach, it seemed the promise might hold. But then the Americans kept coming, wave after wave. They did not retreat. They did not falter. By nightfall they had foothold. Within weeks they had broken out. A grenadier from the 352nd Infantry Division, interviewed after the war, said he knew Germany had lost the moment he saw the sheer scale of the American landing. "The ships," he said, "there were so many ships you could not see the water. And the planes, the sky was black with them. We shot and they kept coming. We killed them and more came. It was not war, it was the ocean swallowing the land." The retreat across France became a nightmare. German forces, harried by fighter bombers, strangled by fuel shortages, found themselves outpaced by American mobility. The Jabos, fighter bombers, became a terror. Any movement in daylight brought screaming dives, rockets, cannon fire. The Americans owned the sky. German soldiers learned to move only at night, to hide in forests, to dread the sound of engines overhead. A veteran Feldwebel described the psychological exhaustion. You could not rest. Even in retreat, even in defeat, they chased you. Their machines never stopped. Their supplies never ended. We were ghosts fighting a factory. The American army was not superhuman, it was something stranger, post-human. Men and machines fused into a system that ground forward regardless of resistance. In the Ardennes, Hitler's last desperate gamble, the German soldier was asked to believe again. December 1944, one final offensive to split the Allied lines, to seize Antwerp, to force a negotiated peace. The propaganda promised victory. The soldiers, cold and hungry, advanced because they had no choice. For a week, the offensive shocked the Americans, pushing deep into Belgium. German soldiers, moving through captured American positions, found themselves surrounded by evidence of a different world. Warehouses full of supplies, jeeps with full fuel tanks, rations so plentiful that American soldiers complained about menu variety. One panzer grenadier, ransacking an American field kitchen, found fresh eggs. Fresh eggs. His unit had not seen fresh eggs in 2 years. He cooked them on a captured stove and ate them in silence, tasting not just food, but the vast chasm between the two armies. The offensive failed, not for lack of courage, but for lack of fuel, lack of supply, lack of the industrial spine that kept the Americans moving. By the time the war entered Germany itself, in early 1945, the German soldiers' perception had fully inverted. The Americans were no longer the decadent weaklings of propaganda. They were a force of nature, unstoppable not because they were better warriors, but because they represented something larger, a system, an economy, a society that waged war as an extension of peacetime abundance. German soldiers starving in the Ruhr pocket watched American artillery fire with a kind of awe. The shells came in such volume that the earth itself seemed to liquefy. A single American division could fire more artillery in a day than an entire German corps could manage in a week. The mathematics of destruction were overwhelming. Yet amid the devastation, a strange respect emerged. German soldiers, surrendering in droves, found that American captors treated them correctly, even kindly. They received food, medical care, cigarettes. POW camps, though crowded, were not death pits. The Americans followed rules, Geneva Convention rules that seemed quaint in the context of total war. A German officer, surrendering near the Elbe, remarked to his men, "We feared the Russians, we respected the British, but the Americans, they are something else. They fight without hate." It was true. The American soldier did not carry the ideological fury of the Soviet, nor the imperial pride of the British. He fought because his country asked him to, and he wanted to go home. This lack of grandiosity, paradoxically, made him more effective. He was not burdened by the need to prove racial superiority or historical destiny. He simply did his job. The chocolate bar became a symbol. Hershey's chocolate, mass-produced, wrapped in brown paper, distributed by the millions to American troops. German children in the ruins of occupied cities learned to beg for it. Chocolate bitter. The GI would smile, toss a bar, move on. It was a small thing, but to the German soldier watching from the shadows, it was profound. The Americans gave away chocolate. The Germans had conquered half of Europe, and still their children starved. What kind of nation could wage war and still have surplus sweetness? It was not just industrial capacity. It was a fundamental difference in how societies were organized. Democracy, for all its messiness, had produced something the Reich could not match: voluntary participation, economic dynamism, and a populace that believed the war was worth winning but not worth dying for unnecessarily. In the end, the German soldier understood what his leaders never could. America had not won because its soldiers were better. It had won because its soldiers did not need to be. They were backed by a system so powerful, so flexible, so overwhelmingly productive that individual heroism became almost irrelevant. The Wehrmacht had warriors. America had logistics. The Wehrmacht had discipline. America had supply chains. The Wehrmacht believed in destiny. America believed in management. And in the industrial age of total war, management defeated destiny every time. The lancer in the Ardennes forest, listening to that laughter across the snow, finally rises. He is out of ammunition, his unit is scattered, the Reich is dying. He walks toward the sound, hands raised. An American sergeant, barely older than a boy, takes his rifle, offers him a cigarette. The German takes it, inhales, tastes Virginia tobacco, real tobacco. The sergeant asks no questions about ideology, about race, about destiny. He simply points toward the rear, toward warmth and food, and the end of fighting. The German walks that direction, and with each step, the narrative he carried crumbles. He was not defeated by supermen. He was defeated by a nation that could afford to be generous in victory, because victory was never in doubt. The snow continues to fall. Somewhere behind the lines, American trucks rumble forward, carrying more men, more shells, more chocolate bars. The war will end soon. The German soldier, now a prisoner, will spend months in a camp, fed 3 meals a day, more than he ate in the last year of fighting. He will return to Germany, to rubble and starvation and occupation, and he will remember those Americans, not as monsters, not as heroes, but as the future. A future built not on ideology, but on production. Not on sacrifice, but on surplus, not on glory, but on going home. And in that memory, the mythology of the master race will dissolve, replaced by a simpler, harder truth. Abundance is its own kind of power, and freedom, messy and undisciplined as it may be, wins wars that fanaticism cannot.